Starla Xander was orphaned at a young age. With both her parents gone, it was her uncle, Xavier Lloyd, who rescued her from that hopeless home. For over a decade, he had cherished her, shielding her from the world, treating her like the most precious gem in his life. She had always believed that one day, she and Xavier would walk down the aisle together. She had fallen hopelessly in love with the man who had cared for her like a father. Back then, one night, a fire broke out in the Xander family home. The house she had grown up in, the parents who had loved her, everything was consumed by the flames. Little Starla curled up in a corner of the balcony, her face streaked with tears, too terrified to move. At that moment, she thought she was going to die. But in the next second, Xavier appeared. He was like a hero descending from the heavens. He kicked open the door and rushed inside, shielding her with his body, blocking the scorching embers with his back. Starla, don't be scared. I'm here. In that instant, in Starla's eyes, he was just like Spider-Man in the movies, her hero. From that day on, she and Xavier relied on each other. They became each other's whole world. Back then, he treated her like a princess, spoiling her beyond reason. Her room was always overflowing with new dresses and Barbie dolls. No matter what she wanted, Xavier never refused. He was the CEO of a multinational corporation, yet he would postpone important meetings just to watch a meteor shower with her. On those nights, he would hold little Starla in his arms, pointing at the falling stars, and say, "Starla, do you know? To me, you're just like this meteor shower." The winter air was freezing, but she nestled in his warm embrace, looking up at him with innocent eyes. "What does that mean?" "You're the brightest star in my heart, just like the aurora, you bring me happiness." That one sentence was engraved in Starla's heart for 10 whole years. But now, she turned to look at the empty villa, a bitter smile appearing on her lips. Today was Xavier's birthday, the last birthday she would ever spend with him. She had made a feast, waiting for him to come home. It wasn't until 3 a.m. that Xavier finally walked through the door. "Why are you still up in the middle of the night?" His voice was ice cold. Starla held out a small ring, her eyes full of hope. "Uncle Xavier. Happy birthday. This is my gift for you." "Starla, I have a girlfriend. I already have a wedding ring. Open your eyes and see clearly." Xavier looked annoyed as he raised his left hand, showing his ring finger. Then, he tossed the ring she had given him aside. "I was your father's best friend, your legal guardian. The uncle you call me. There will never be anything between us. The last time you told me you liked me, I chose to ignore it. But from now on, keep your distance. If you can't, then leave the country and never come back." Every word was a knife to her heart, cutting deep. Xavier turned and left. Starla knelt down under the dining table, picking up the ring she had spent 3 months making. Pain crept through her chest. Inside the band, she had carefully engraved Xavier's initials, letter, by hand. She had only wanted to give him a handmade gift, wishing him peace and happiness in the years to come. After all, this was the only thing she could leave behind for him. Nothing more. On the coffee table lay a signed consent form for an experimental cryopreservation. The only thing left was to hand it over to her mentor. She had already made up her mind. But the thought of never seeing Xavier again made it impossible to let go. Just then, a notification sound broke the silence. She picked up her phone, and the moment she saw the screen, her chest tightened. It was a new social media update from Wendy Scott. "I'm going to be the most beautiful bride." The video showed Xavier by her side, helping her try on wedding dresses. His eyes were filled with tenderness as he looked at her. No matter which dress she wore, he said she looked stunning. "Oh, come on." Wendy pouted playfully. "Are you just saying that to make me happy? If you keep giving me those half-hearted compliments, I'm gonna get mad." Xavier smiled and gently adjusted her veil. "How could I? You're beautiful to begin with. No matter what you wear, you'll always look perfect." In the end, they chose a mermaid-style wedding gown with a sweeping train. The white fabric cascaded across the floor like a galaxy, and the veil was adorned with diamonds that sparkled like stars in the winter sky. Starla tossed her phone aside, unwilling to watch any longer. She tilted her head back, taking a deep breath, forcing herself not to cry. The theme of that wedding dress was called Miracle. She had designed it with her own hands. She had always believed that one day, she would be the one walking down the aisle in that dress, with Xavier by her side. But reality had shattered her dream into pieces. The next day, Starla sent a message to her mentor, setting up a time to hand over the consent form. Then, she called Xavier. The phone rang for a long time before he finally picked up. "What is it?" His voice was thick with impatience. Starla was silent for a few seconds before asking softly, "When's your wedding?" "July 9th. Why?" Xavier's tone turned cold. "What are you planning?" "I'm warning you, don't even think about causing trouble at the wedding." July 9th. The day they first met. The day Xavier had pulled her from the fire. A bitter smile tugged at Starla's lips. "I see. I won't, Uncle Xavier. Congratulations on your marriage." She hung up the phone and headed to campus to meet her mentor. "Starla, are you really sure about this?" Professor Zimmer sighed as he looked at the young woman in front of him. "Even though you have breast cancer, treatment could still give you another year or two. If you go through with this cryogenic experiment, even the smallest mistake could mean immediate death. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider?" He hesitated before adding, "Your uncle cares about you so much. If something happens to you, he'd turn the whole city upside down looking for answers." Starla let out a wry smile and shook her head. "I've already made up my mind, Professor. As for Xavier, he won't have the time to worry about me anymore." After finalizing the details of the cryogenic experiment, Starla followed her mentor to the lab to begin the preliminary preparations. By the time she finished everything and returned home, it was already 8 p.m. As she approached the villa, she noticed that the light in Xavier's bedroom on the second floor was still on. A flicker of hope rose in her chest, only to be replaced by self-mockery a second later. She was pathetic. Even after being rejected, she still couldn't control her feelings. But when she opened the door, the person waiting inside wasn't Xavier. It was Wendy. The moment Wendy saw her, a flash of irritation crossed her eyes, but she quickly masked it with delight. "Oh my, Starla. You're back. We were just about to head out for dinner. Want to join us?" She led Starla into the living room, instructing the housekeeper to bring her a glass of water, acting every bit like the lady of the house. Starla's heart sank. She stood up from the couch, about to decline, when Xavier came downstairs. "Why are you getting home so late?" He frowned instinctively at the sight of her but quickly added, "From now on, Wendy will be staying in my room. I've already talked to the housekeeper, she's in charge of the household now." Starla bit her lip and lowered her voice. "Got it. Of course. From now on, Wendy was the lady of the house. And she was nothing more than a pretend family member with no real ties to him." Xavier glanced at her, slightly surprised. Strange. Wasn't she supposed to throw a fit and refuse? But he quickly brushed off the thought, slipping his arm around Wendy's. "Wendy and I are heading out for dinner. Are you coming with us, or are you eating at home?" Starla looked at them. Xavier's tone made it seem like he was offering her a choice, but his eyes said otherwise. He didn't really want her there. She forced a smile and shook her head. "No, I have schoolwork to take care of. I won't bother you too." She turned to head upstairs. Just as she passed Wendy, Wendy suddenly bumped into her. Starla's papers slipped from her grasp, scattering across the floor. "Oh no." Wendy let out a dramatic gasp, stumbling straight into Xavier's arms. Starla froze in place. She hadn't even touched Wendy, yet Wendy acted as if she had shoved her with all her strength. "Be more careful when you walk," Xavier scolded, frowning as he bent down to pick up a paper. "Cell-based cryopreservation therapy for cancer." He read the words aloud, his expression darkening. "What is this?" Starla panicked and quickly snatched the paper from his hands. It's nothing." Xavier studied her for a moment. Confusion flickered across his face before it twisted into anger. "You seriously think I'd fall for this just to get my attention?" Starla froze. Then she understood. Back when Xavier first brought her into his home, she had been a lonely, frightened child with no one to rely on. She had clung to him, bombarding him with endless questions. Will you always stay with me? What if you have to go on a business trip? What if you get sick? I saw on TV that there's something called cancer. If people get it, they die. Xavier, you can't ever get sick. You have to stay with me forever, okay? Xavier had reassured her with a smile. I won't. I won't ever get cancer. For you, Starla, I'll stay healthy and be by your side. And now, he thought she was using this as an act to manipulate him, trying to guilt him into caring again. A bitter taste filled her mouth, but she forced herself to stay calm. Uncle Xavier, don't overthink it. This is just the research topic Professor Zimmer and I are working on this semester. These are just some materials I found. However, Xavier didn't believe her. You're not even planning to become a doctor. Why spend all your time researching this? Starla fell silent for a moment before replying softly, I'm just interested in it, that's all. If you don't like it, I can choose another topic. Xavier didn't say anything else, but his expression remained grim. Sensing the tension, Wendy immediately stepped in to smooth things over. Oh, come on, Starla's just studying. It doesn't matter what she learns, it's her choice. She's grown up now, Xavier. You can't control her forever. All right, enough arguing. Weren't we heading out for dinner? At that, Xavier's expression softened slightly. He took Wendy by the arm and walked out the door, not bothering to ask Starla anything more. Starla watched as Wendy moved so freely between Xavier's bedroom and study, as if she had every right to be there. Ever since she had confessed her feelings to Xavier, he had forbidden her from entering those rooms. Even when she wanted to visit him at work, she had to go through layers of approval from the receptionist and his assistant. Before, she had been able to go anywhere in this house without restriction. Xavier had never set boundaries with her. Starla lay in bed, listening to the sound of their footsteps fading down the hallway. No matter how much she tossed and turned, she couldn't fall asleep. She had no idea how much time had passed, but when she looked outside, the sky was filled with stars. Since she couldn't rest, she got up and decided to take a walk in the garden. After all, she would be leaving soon. Every day she spent in this house was one day closer to her last. But as soon as she reached the stairs, she ran into Wendy, who was holding a glass of water. Oh, Starla. Still up this late? Wendy smirked, her eyes gleaming with open hostility. Having trouble sleeping? She was dressed in a lace nightgown, her shoulders and chest exposed, covered in faint kiss marks. Starla averted her gaze and replied calmly, just taking a walk. Wendy stepped closer, her voice dripping with disdain. Oh, don't pretend. Seeing me with Xavier is driving you crazy with jealousy, isn't it? I'm not. Starla swallowed the bitterness rising in her throat and forced herself to stay composed. But Wendy only sneered. Even if you are, it doesn't matter. You and Xavier will never be together. He practically raised you. He's like your guardian. Having feelings for him is disgusting. He'll never love you. You were never meant to be with him. Her words cut like a knife, slicing straight through Starla's heart. Of course, she knew exactly why Xavier had rejected her. But when love happens, how could she possibly stop herself from falling for him? Besides, there was no blood relation between them. How could it be wrong? He simply didn't love her. Ethics were just an excuse to turn her down. But maybe it was for the best. If he had accepted her feelings, how devastated would he be when he found out she had cancer? It was better this way. If he never loved her, then when she was gone, he wouldn't grieve. That was a good thing, wasn't it? Seeing Starla stay silent, Wendy smirked and continued, though, I guess it makes sense. After all, I heard the fire that burned down your house was set by your mother. Xavier's too busy to care about you. You're just an orphan, and the daughter of an arsonist at that. No wonder you turned out so twisted. She lowered her voice and leaned in. You better be careful, Starla. Having feelings for your own uncle? That's the kind of thing that gets people shunned for life. At that, Starla's eyes filled with fury. Shut up. She lunged forward. Don't you dare insult my parents. Memories rushed back, flooding her mind. A 5-year-old Starla hid behind the sofa, watching as her parents argued in the living room. Why did the company lose so much money last quarter? I told you to stay out of business matters. We're husband and wife. The company belongs to me too. Why should I sit at home like a trophy wife? Her father stubbed out his cigarette in the ashtray and turned to leave, but her mother, blinded by anger, grabbed his arm. In the struggle, the ashtray tipped over. The still-lit cigarette rolled onto the carpet, setting it ablaze. The flames spread, to the curtains, the wallpaper, and then the entire house. It had been an accident. But to the media, always hungry for a scandal, it became a sensational story: billionaire couple's tragic downfall, arson and murder. Starla stepped forward, ready to argue, but before she could say anything, Wendy suddenly let go of the glass in her hand. The cup crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces. The loud noise echoed through the villa. The door to Xavier's bedroom swung open. He took one look at the broken glass, at the two of them standing face to face, and immediately strode forward, pulling Wendy protectively into his arms. Then he turned on Starla, his voice cold and furious. Starla, what the hell did you do to Wendy? Wendy took the opportunity to lean into Xavier's arms, her voice trembling with tears. I'm sorry, Xavier. I don't know what I did to upset Starla. She really seems to hate me. I only wanted to check on her since she was still awake so late at night. But the moment she saw me, she got angry. She called me a manipulative vixen trying to seduce you and even pushed me. Look, my wrist is swollen. As she spoke, tears rolled down her face, making her look as if she had suffered a great injustice. That's not true. Starla blurted out, her voice rising. She was the one who disrespected my parents first. She even called me an orphan and the daughter of an arsonist. She turned to Xavier, desperate for even the smallest bit of trust from him. But Wendy only widened her eyes innocently. How could I say something like that? I've volunteered at orphanages for years, helping so many poor children who don't have parents. Why would I ever say something so cruel? Starla opened her mouth to argue, but Xavier's expression had already darkened. He stepped in front of Wendy protectively, his gaze cold as he looked at Starla. Starla, what's happened to you? Wendy has always been kind and respectful. Why would she do what you're accusing her of? You're jealous, you lash out, and now you're making false accusations. Where's the respect and decency I taught you? Starla felt like her throat was stuffed with cotton. She couldn't get a single word out. With just a few sentences, Xavier had already condemned her as guilty. No matter how much she tried to explain, he would only see it as nonsense. The emotions burning inside her were instantly extinguished, leaving behind nothing but cold emptiness. She let out a bitter smile. So that's what you think of me? Fine. Believe whatever you want. Lowering her head, she brushed past them and tried to leave. But before she could take another step, Xavier grabbed her arm. You think you can just walk away after what you've done? Apologize to Wendy. Starla met his gaze, her eyes filled with quiet defiance. She didn't care if Xavier misunderstood her. She didn't care if Wendy looked down on her. But when it came to her parents, she would never back down. Xavier's eyes went cold. So you're refusing? Starla, looks like you've really grown bold. Mrs. Lucas. His voice was sharp as he called for the housekeeper. Move all of her things to the guest room. She can move back when she finally learns some respect. Until then, no one is allowed to let her set foot on the second floor. Starla watched as her things were carried one by one into a tiny room near the laundry area. She let out a quiet, self-deprecating laugh. She should have realized it sooner. She was no longer special in this house. Not only that, but Xavier wouldn't even let her sit at the same table as them during meals. Without looking up, he said flatly, when you learn to respect your elders, you can eat with us again. Starla didn't argue. She simply picked up her blanket and turned back toward her room. As she made her bed, she thought to herself, it doesn't matter if Xavier hates me. I'll be gone soon anyway. Once I disappear, he won't even feel anything. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Professor Zimmer. Starla, all the preliminary work is complete. The earliest we can proceed with the cryopreservation procedure is in a week. When do you want to schedule it? She glanced at the calendar. A week from now, July 9th. The day she and Xavier first met. The day he pulled her from the fire. Let's do it on July 9th. She spoke softly. I've always liked that date. Professor Zimmer hesitated before saying, there's still a week left. You should take this time to say goodbye to your loved ones. Xavier cares about you a lot. If he finds out, he'll definitely struggle to let you go. Starla stayed silent. She had no idea how to say goodbye to Xavier. Just the thought of leaving him forever made her heart ache. I fought with him. There's no need for a goodbye. Xavier hated her. If he knew she was leaving, he would probably be relieved. Professor Zimmer sighed on the other end. Your uncle loves you. There's no way he's really mad at you. You must have done something to make him upset again. He's been so good to you. Listen to me, go apologize and say goodbye properly. Don't leave regrets behind. Starla hesitated. The next afternoon, she asked the housekeeper to take her to Xavier's study. What is it? Though Xavier had banned her from the second floor, when he saw her at the door, he didn't get angry. He simply kept his head down, focused on his work. Uncle Xavier, she nervously twisted her fingers. I came to apologize. Xavier lifted his head and studied her. Apologize to me? The one you should be apologizing to is Wendy. He called Wendy over and made her stand in front of Starla, his gaze locked on them both. Apologize. To Wendy. Starla shut her eyes briefly, thinking about Professor Zimmer's words. Swallowing her pride, she forced herself to say the words. I'm sorry, Wendy. Her voice trembled with suppressed emotion, thick with unspoken grievances. For some reason, Xavier couldn't help but glance at her again. How odd. He frowned. Why did seeing Starla like this make his chest tighten? She was finally behaving, admitting her mistakes, and acting mature. Shouldn't he be pleased? Yet, instead of relief, all he felt was discomfort. Still, he kept his expression cold. From now on, you need to show Wendy the respect she deserves. Understood? Understood. Starla's voice was barely a whisper as she turned and hurried out of the study. But just as she stepped away, she overheard voices from the slightly open door behind her. Xavier, Starla has always been reckless and stubborn. If she causes a scene at the wedding, wouldn't that embarrass the Lloyd family? Xavier didn't respond right away, as if considering her words. After a pause, Wendy continued, why don't we send her abroad? If she's in another country, she won't see you anymore. That way, she can finally let go of those inappropriate thoughts. Plus, she'll be able to focus on her studies. What do you think? For a long moment, there was silence. Then, Starla heard Xavier's quiet response. I'll think about it. If she still refuses to behave, then we'll do as you said. Her stomach clenched. So there really wasn't a single place left for her in this house. Starla felt her heart sink, deeper and deeper, until it was completely lost at the bottom of the ocean. Without a word, she turned and walked back to her room. Starla made time to visit the lab. Professor Zimmer told her that to prevent any disturbances during cryogenic preservation, the freezing chamber would be stored at the bottom of the ocean. You can choose any sea you like, he said. Really? Starla thought for a moment before replying, I want my chamber placed in the Arctic Ocean. Why? She smiled, though a trace of sadness lingered in her eyes. Because you can see the aurora there. And when the aurora lights up the sky, it hides the Milky Way from view. She was no longer Xavier's brightest star. No longer his miracle. The starry sky, once beautiful, was now nothing more than a painful reminder. She was dying. And if nothing else, she wanted her soul to be free, free from this love that had broken her heart. When she returned home, she found her bedroom door wide open. Clothes and shoes were scattered across the floor, as if someone had ransacked the place. Even the medical report she had carefully hidden in her nightstand was gone. Who? Starla stormed downstairs, her voice shaking with rage. Who went into my room? I told you all, no one is allowed in there. The servants exchanged uneasy glances before one of them hesitantly spoke. Miss Sander, it wasn't us. It was Miss Scott. She said Mr. Lloyd gave her permission. A mix of grief and fury made Starla tremble. So many words fought to escape her throat, but she couldn't even get them out. Just then, Wendy strolled in, drawn by the commotion. Seeing Starla's expression, she smirked. Starla pointed at the mess in her room, her hand shaking. Was it you? Did you do this? Wendy let out a dismissive chuckle. Oops, sorry about that, Starla. My nightgown got dirty, so Xavier told me to borrow one of yours. Once I buy a new one, I'll wash yours and return it. You don't mind, do you? Looking at the woman standing before her, the culprit who had torn through the last bit of privacy she had, Starla could no longer hold back her rage. She lunged forward, grabbing Wendy by the throat, her eyes burning red. Who gave you the right to go through my things? She demanded. This is the last space I have in this house. What more do you want? Her voice cracked, all the grievances she had endured over the past few weeks pouring out at once. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Xavier rushed over, only to find Starla gripping Wendy by the neck. His expression darkened instantly. He stepped forward and shoved Starla aside, carefully cradling Wendy in his arms. Wendy, are you okay? Just moments ago, Wendy had been smirking. Now, tears welled up in her eyes as she clung to Xavier. I'm fine, she whispered tearfully. It's just. Starla got mad at me again. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, she pulled out a folded piece of paper. And I also found this. It was Starla's medical report. It says here that Starla has breast cancer. She turned to Starla, her eyes shimmering with fake concern. Starla, is this true? You're not joking about something this serious, are you? You wouldn't try to scare me and Xavier like that, would you? Her words sounded caring, but every sentence was laced with the implication that Starla was lying. Xavier's anger flared. He turned to Starla, his voice sharp. Starla, have I spoiled you too much? You actually dared to lay hands on Wendy again? Snatching the report from Wendy's hands, he skimmed through it quickly before glaring at Starla. What is this? You were fine before. How could you suddenly have something like this? Starla clenched her fists and yelled back, she was the one who invaded my space first. And as for that... She hesitated. She wasn't ready to tell him about her illness. But then, a bitter thought crept into her mind. If Xavier knew, would he finally treat her better? Xavier didn't give her a chance to answer. His patience snapped. I was the one who gave her permission to enter your room. She only borrowed a nightgown. Do you really have to make such a big deal out of it? Seeing Starla hesitate, his anger only deepened. So, is this medical report just another stunt to get my attention? You keep targeting Wendy. What exactly do you want? If you don't want to stay in this house anymore, then get out. I didn't do anything. Starla's voice cracked with frustration, but before she could explain, Xavier had already made up his mind. He pulled Wendy protectively behind him and gave Starla a hard, disappointed look. Enough, Starla. I clearly didn't raise you well. Wendy and I have discussed it. Next month, you'll go abroad. It's time for you to leave this house. Take some time away and reflect. It'll be better for both of us. Starla stared at him, feeling as though she had been doused in ice water from head to toe. How could he say he didn't want her anymore, just like that? Weren't they supposed to be the closest people to each other? How could he be so blindly protective of Wendy to the point of kicking her out of his life? A soft, self-mocking laugh escaped her lips. Fine, I get it. You don't have to kick me out. I'll leave on my own. After all, in just a few days, she would be gone from this world forever. But before she could take a step, something warm dripped onto the floor. Huh? What was that? She touched her face and realized that her nose was bleeding. A sudden wave of dizziness hit her. Her vision blurred. Then her body gave out. She collapsed. Xavier's face went pale in an instant. He lunged forward, catching her just before she hit the ground. Starla. His voice wavered for the first time. What's wrong? Starla.